Hey everyone, and welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, today we are going back in time a little bit, taking a look at the Acer Aspire Timeline Series.
Okay.
These laptops were really known for having crazy long battery life.
Yeah.
Like, people were blown away. So we've got this great review from RechargeMyTopup.com, and we're going to break down what made them so special.
Yeah.
How they managed to make those batteries last forever, it seemed like. And we'll even talk about if they are worth considering in 2025.
Wow.
So if you're thinking about maybe getting a budget laptop, or you're just a little bit fascinated by how tech has evolved over the years, you're in the right place.
I think what was really interesting about this series, the Timeline series, was that it came out at a time when laptops were getting, thinner, lighter, but battery life was one of the things that got sacrificed in the process.
Right.
So Acer really flipped the script and proved that you could have both portability and endurance.
I mean, picture this. It's 2009. You've got this laptop that's sleek, it's thin, made of aluminum, but it also lasts for like 8 hours on a single charge.
Yeah.
That was like unheard of back then.
It was a game changer, really.
Yeah, it was.
The review points out that the Timeline Ultra models were only 20 millimeters thick.
Wow.
Which is still pretty impressive by today's standards,
Yeah.
Imagine carrying that around in your bag all day and not having to even worry about finding an outlet.
I mean, it sounds like a dream, right?
Yeah.
Compared to some of the laptops I was lugging around back in the day, those things were practically plugged in 24/7.
Oh, yeah.
So how did they pull it off? Like, what was the secret sauce behind this battery life revolution?
It was a bunch of different things, really.
Yeah.
First, they used Intel's ULV processors.
Okay.
These were designed to use less power
Okay.
while still delivering decent performance. Think of it like a marathon runner.
Okay.
Efficient. Not necessarily the fastest, but they can go the distance.
Oh, okay. So it wasn't just about throwing in, like, a bigger battery.
Right.
It was about, like, optimizing the whole system to just sip power.
Right, exactly. The review also mentioned something called laminar wall jet technology.
Okay.
It's a little technical, but it basically improved airflow and cooling, which further reduced energy consumption.
So basically, like, they thought about every little detail to make sure that battery lasted as long as possible.
Yeah.
But we're not just talking about vague promises, are we? Like, What kind of real-world battery life were these laptops actually getting?
Well, those early models were already hitting 8+ hours, which was amazing at the time.
Right.
But then in 2010, they released the TimelineX series, and some of those versions were pushing 12 hours.
Wow.
That's a full workday, maybe even 2, without needing to recharge.
I mean, that's going to be some kind of record, right?
Yeah.
Did any other laptops at the time even come close to that kind of endurance?
Not really. The Timeline series really set a new standard. It forced other manufacturers to start thinking more seriously about battery life, and efficiency.
Yeah. So we've established that these laptops were like battery beasts.
Yeah.
But what about performance? I mean, were they just good for like checking email and browsing the web, or could you actually do some like real work on them?
Well, those early models, they were definitely geared more towards like efficiency than raw power. They could handle basic tasks, but if you were doing anything more demanding, you might have run into some limitations.
But things changed with the TimelineX series in 2010, right?
Yeah.
The review mentioned something about Intel Core processors. Was that a significant upgrade?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Those Intel Core processors brought a major performance boost. Suddenly, the TimelineX laptops could handle multitasking, light gaming, even some media editing. Wow. It was a big jump forward.
And it makes sense. I mean, technology was evolving so quickly back then.
Yeah.
Every year brought like noticeable improvements in processing power.
Absolutely.
Did things keep improving after the TimelineX series came out?
They did. In 2011, Acer introduced Timeline models with Intel's Sandy Bridge processors. These were even faster and more efficient.
Wow.
Making the Timeline series even more capable.
So by 2011, you've got these slim, lightweight laptops that can last all day on a single charge, and they're actually powerful enough to handle like a decent workload.
Yeah.
It sounds like Acer was really onto something with the Timeline series.
Definitely.
But let's get into the nitty-gritty for a second.
Okay.
What kind of models were there? Were they all pretty much the same, or were there different options for like different needs?
There were definitely some variations.
Okay.
For folks who prioritize portability,
Right.
there was the Aspire 3830T It had a compact 13.3-inch screen.
Okay.
If you wanted a little bit more screen real estate, you could go for the 4830T 14-inch display.
Gotcha.
And then, for those who needed even bigger workspace, there was the 5830T, which boasted a 15.6-inch screen.
Okay, so you had a good range of sizes to choose from.
Yeah.
But what about people who needed more power, like gamers?
Yeah.
Did the Timeline series have anything to offer them?
You know, they did.
Really?
Acer actually released some Timeline models with dedicated graphics cards.
Okay.
The TG models came equipped with an NVIDIA GeForce GT 540M.
Okay.
That wasn't top of the line even back then.
Right.
But it was a decent option for casual gaming and more graphics-intensive tasks.
So they weren't just focused on battery life.
Yeah.
They were also thinking about performance and versatility.
Right.
And speaking of versatility, I noticed the review mentioned something called NVIDIA Optimus technology.
Oh, yeah.
What was that all about?
That was a really clever feature.
Okay.
Essentially, it allowed the laptop to automatically switch between the integrated graphics and the dedicated NVIDIA graphics card.
Okay.
Depending on what you were doing. So if you were just, browsing the web or working on documents, it would use the integrated graphics to save battery.
Oh, that's smart.
But if you fired up a game, it would seamlessly switch to the NVIDIA card for better performance.
That's pretty impressive. It sounds like they were really trying to, optimize every aspect of these laptops.
Yeah.
But let's move beyond the specs for a minute.
Okay.
And talk about the actual user experience. What was it actually like to use one of these Timeline laptops?
Well, the review mentions that the displays were decent for the time.
Okay.
They had good color reproduction, but the resolution wasn't anything to write home about. But remember, this was before the days of high-resolution screens that we're used to now.
Right. Expectations were different back then.
Right.
But what about other aspects of the experience, like the keyboard, the touchpad, the speakers?
Yeah.
Does anything stand out?
Actually, the audio was surprisingly good. Acer included Dolby Home theater speakers on the Timeline series.
Oh, what?
Which made a noticeable difference in sound quality. And get this.
What?
The TimelineX models actually had Kenwood speakers.
Whoa, Kenwood speakers in a laptop.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. It sounds like they didn't just focus on the core specs.
Yeah.
They actually paid attention to the little details that could enhance the user experience. But before we go down memory lane too much, let's talk about connectivity.
Right.
I mean, these laptops came out before USB-C was everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of ports did they actually have?
Well, they had a pretty good selection of ports for the time. You had your standard USB ports. Some of them even offered USB 3.0 speeds, which was cutting edge back then. They also had HDMI for connecting to external displays, VGA for older projectors, and Ethernet for wired internet connections.
Okay.
Later models even included Bluetooth.
Oh, okay.
So you could connect your wireless accessories.
So they weren't lacking in the connectivity department.
No.
And I bet they had those old school SD card readers and DVD drives too, right?
You bet.
Those were essential back in the day.
Yeah. I remember burning CDs and watching movies on DVD.
I know, right? Those were the days. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about design, battery life, performance, features, and even a little bit of nostalgia, it seems like.
Yeah.
But the big question is, are these laptops still relevant in 2025? I mean, Ultrabooks have come a long way since then.
Right.
Do these older Acers have anything left to offer?
That's a great question. And it's not a simple yes or no answer.
Okay.
For power users who need the latest and greatest,
Right.
the Timeline series probably isn't going to cut it.
Okay.
But for certain people, they can still be a viable option.
Yeah.
Especially if you find a good deal on the used market.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Who exactly are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Who might still benefit from an Acer Aspire Timeline in 2025?
Well, think about students who need a reliable laptop for basic tasks, like writing papers, browsing the web, and streaming videos.
Okay.
Or maybe someone who just needs a secondary laptop for travel. And doesn't want to spend a fortune. And of course, anyone who prioritizes battery life above all else might find the Timeline series appealing.
That makes sense. They might not be the flashiest laptops anymore,
Right.
but they're still solid machines, especially if you can snag one for a good price.
Yeah.
But let's dig a little deeper into this whole used laptop thing.
Okay.
What should people be aware of if they're considering buying a used Acer Aspire Timeline in 2025? What are the potential pitfalls?
That's a great question. And it's something we'll definitely explore in more detail as we continue our deep dive into the Acer Aspire Timeline series.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after a quick break to discuss the pros and cons of buying a used Acer Aspire Timeline in 2025. Stay tuned.
All right, so we're back and ready to really dive into this whole thing about buying a used Acer Aspire Timeline in 2025.
Yeah.
I mean, they sound tempting, especially if you're on a budget, but are there any red flags, anything to watch out for?
Well, I think with any used laptop, the biggest concern is always the battery.
Even though these were known for, how long the battery lasted, batteries do degrade over time.
Yeah.
So, before you hand over any cash, you really want to make sure you check the battery health.
Yeah.
If it's barely holding a charge, then you're going to lose that legendary timeline endurance.
Right. It kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Exactly.
What about the specs? I mean, these laptops are over a decade old at this point.
Right.
Can they handle modern software, operating systems, all that?
That's a good question. It really depends on the model.
Okay.
Some of the earlier timelines might struggle with newer operating systems, or if you're trying to run really demanding applications.
Okay.
If you're planning to do more than just those really basic tasks.
Right.
It's worth, looking for a Timeline X model with a decent Intel Core processor and making sure it has enough RAM.
So, do your research, check the specs carefully, and maybe avoid those really early models unless you really, really just need it for the most basic things.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else to watch out for?
I would say definitely give the laptop a good visual inspection.
Okay.
Look for any signs of wear and tear,
Yeah.
especially in the keyboard, the touchpad, and the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Also check all the ports, make sure they're working properly.
Right.
You want to make sure you're getting a laptop that's in good physical condition.
Got it. So it's like buying a used car. You don't want to end up with a lemon.
Exactly.
Any other tips for kind of navigating the used laptop market?
Well, I always recommend reading reviews from other users who have bought, these laptops secondhand.
Okay.
They can give you a sense of what to expect
Yeah.
in terms of overall condition, performance.
Right.
And of course, make sure you're buying from a reputable seller.
Yeah.
Someone who offers some kind of warranty or return policy.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Just in case something goes wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's always good to have. So even though the Timeline series might not be the latest and greatest, it seems like they can still be a good option for, certain users.
Yeah.
Especially those on a budget.
Absolutely. And it's a testament to, how well built these laptops were.
Mm-hmm.
That even after all these years, they can still hold their own for basic tasks, and they still offer that legendary battery life.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback to a time when things were built to last.
I agree.
But, as we're talking about these older laptops, it makes me kind of wonder, are there any features from that era that you actually miss?
Oh, interesting.
Things that you wish had become more common in modern laptops.
I kind of miss those dedicated media keys that used to be so common on laptops.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You could adjust the volume, control playback,
Yeah.
all that kind of multimedia stuff without having to dig through, on-screen menus or function key combinations. It was just so convenient.
I remember those. They were so handy, especially when you were watching a movie or listening to music. Why do you think they disappeared?
I suspect it has something to do with that, relentless pursuit of thinner and lighter designs.
Yeah.
Every millimeter counts. And dedicated media keys might have been seen as a luxury that took up too much space.
But from a user experience standpoint,
Yeah.
they were so practical.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe they'll make a comeback someday.
Maybe.
Especially with the rise of, larger screens, foldable devices.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Sometimes the best ideas are the ones that were already tried and true.
Totally. Speaking of blast from the past, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
Do you ever miss optical drive?
Yes. The good old DVD drive. It seems almost quaint now
I know.
in the age of streaming and cloud storage. But there was something satisfying about having a physical disk drive in your laptop.
I know, right? I used to burn and mix CDs for my friends, watch movies on DVD, even install software from discs.
Yeah.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
It's amazing how quickly things have changed.
Yeah.
But even though streaming is, incredibly convenient, there's a certain, tangibility and nostalgia associated with physical media that I think a lot of people still appreciate.
Absolutely. And let's be honest, sometimes it's nice to have a physical backup of your important files just in case something happens to your cloud storage.
Right.
But I guess that's a discussion for another day. For now, let's bring it back to the Acer Aspire timeline.
Yeah.
And those mind-blowing battery life numbers.
8 to 12 hours on a single charge.
Yeah.
That's still pretty impressive, even by today's standards.
Yeah.
It's amazing what they were able to achieve with the technology they had back then.
It really shows like how dedicated they were to power efficiency. They squeezed every last drop of juice out of those batteries. It makes me wonder, like, are there any lessons we can learn from their approach, even in today's world of like super powered laptops?
I think there are definitely some takeaways.
Okay.
The Timeline series reminds us that it's not just about having the biggest battery, it's about optimizing the entire system for efficiency.
Right.
That means using power sipping processors, smart power management features.
Yeah.
And even thinking about things like airflow and cooling.
It's a holistic approach, right?
Exactly.
It's not just one magic bullet. It's about paying attention to like every detail. But enough about the past. Let's talk about the future.
Okay.
What do you think will be the defining feature of the next generation of laptops? What's going to be that next big breakthrough that changes everything?
That's a tough question. It's hard to predict where technology will go next.
Right.
But I think we'll probably see even more integration of artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
Making our laptops more intuitive, more personalized. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see, advancements in battery technology that allow for even longer run times.
Longer battery life. I am all for that. But what about the way we actually interact with laptops?
Yeah.
I think we'll move away from traditional keyboards and touchpads.
Well, I think we'll probably see more experimentation with different input methods, like voice control, gesture recognition, and maybe even, brain-computer interfaces. It's all about making our devices more seamless and intuitive to use.
Those are some exciting possibilities.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with the future, let's take a moment to appreciate what the Acer Aspire Timeline Series actually accomplished. They were ahead of their time. They pushed the boundaries of what laptops could be, and I think they left a lasting legacy on the industry.
I completely agree. They proved that long battery life and sleek design could coexist.
Yeah.
And they really inspired a whole generation of Ultrabooks.
They were true pioneers. But what about you, dear listener?
Yeah.
What features do you prioritize most in a laptop today? And what features from past gadgets do you secretly wish would make a comeback?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Share your answers on social media and tag us in your posts.
We're always eager to hear from our fellow tech enthusiasts.
Yes.
And who knows, maybe your ideas will inspire the next generation of groundbreaking laptops.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive into the Acer Aspire Timeline series, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, I'm all ears.
The Timeline series, it reminds us that innovation doesn't always mean reinventing the wheel. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's about taking a simple idea, like long battery life, and executing it brilliantly.
Well said. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Acer Aspire Timeline series.
I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane and that you learned a thing or two about these groundbreaking laptops.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world of technology.
Farewell, fellow tech enthusiasts. We'll see you on the next deep dive.
We've talked about what made these Aspire timelines so special, even looked at if it makes sense to buy one used today.
Right.
But I'm kind of curious about features from other old tech. Is there anything you kind of miss? Anything you wish would make a comeback?
It's funny, right? We love all our sleek new devices.
Yeah.
But sometimes those older gadgets, they had a certain charm.
Right.
Personally, I miss the that satisfying click of a physical keyboard.
Oh, yeah.
Those virtual keyboards, they're getting better. But there's really nothing quite like that. That tactile feedback of real keys.
Oh, absolutely. Like that clickety-clack, the subtle variations in pressure.
Yeah.
It's like a different kind of connection to what you're actually typing.
Exactly. For tasks like writing, I think that tactile feedback can actually boost creativity and focus.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that intentional act of pressing a key. Mm-hmm. That deliberate movement, it makes the experience feel, I don't know, more real, more immersive. It's interesting.
I think that's why some people, they still swear by mechanical keyboards,
right,
even though they're, bulkier, less portable.
It's all about finding that
right.
balance, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see physical keyboards make a comeback someday. Maybe with haptic technology that mimics that feel of those old mechanical keys.
Oh, imagine that.
Right.
Right.
Or maybe, those dedicated media keys we were talking about, maybe they'll reappear on foldable devices.
Right.
Who knows what the future holds?
Yeah. Who knows?
We've explored the past, we've dreamed about the future.
Yeah.
But the real question is, what did this Acer Aspire Timeline Series truly achieve? What's its lasting impact?
From my perspective, the Timeline series, it was really a pivotal moment in the evolution of portable computing.
Mm-hmm.
It showed the world that you could have a laptop that was both thin and light
Mm-hmm.
and have incredible battery life, without sacrificing performance.
Yeah, it wasn't just a good laptop. It was a trendsetter.
Yeah.
Other manufacturers saw what Acer did, and they were like, "Hey, people actually want laptops that can keep up with their busy lives."
Exactly. And look where we are today. Ultrabooks, their slim profiles and all-day battery life. They owe a debt of gratitude to the Acer Aspire Timeline series.
It's like a family tree of technology.
Yeah.
And the Timeline series is right there at the roots.
Uh-huh.
So even though the Acer Aspire Timeline might not be like a household name today, its legacy lives on in the devices we use and the expectations we have for portable computing.
Absolutely.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive on the Acer Aspire Timeline series.
Yeah.
But before we go, I want to turn it over to you, dear listener.
Yeah.
What feature from any past gadget do you wish would make a comeback?
Let us know.
Share your thoughts on social media.
Yeah. Tag us.
We'd love to hear your tech nostalgia and what features you think, deserve a second chance.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed exploring the past, present, and future of portable computing.
Until next time, may your battery life be long and your tech adventures exciting.
Keep diving deep.